Financial policy of corporate strategy. Balancing financial goals with sustainable growth. The balance of financial goals versus sustainable growth. The concept of sustainable growth can be helpful for planning and healthy corporate growth. The concept forces managers to consider the financial consequence of sales increase and set sale growth goals that is consistent with the operating and financial policy of the firm. Often conflict can arise in the growth objective and is not consistent with the value of organization sustainability growth. The question concerned with the right distribution of resources may takes a difficult shape if you take into consideration of righteousness, not the current stakeholder but the future stakeholder also. To take an illustration, let us refer to the fuel industry where the resources are limited to quantity, and judicial use the resources needed to create cater to need the future consumer along with the need of present consumers. One may have issued the saving fuel campaign, a demarketing campaign, and deviate from the usual approach of sales growth strategy and preaches the conservation of fuel to use of cross generation. It is an example of stable growth strategy adopted by the oil industry as to whole under the resources constraint and the long run objective to survival over years. The incremental growth strategy, profit strategy, process strategy, and variety of stable growth strategy. Sustainable growth is important to enterprise long-term development. Too fast, too slow growth will also go enterprise into growth and development. So financial should play an important role in enterprise development. Adopt the sustainability financial policy initiative to make sure the enterprise's growth speed close to sustainability growth ratio and have sustainable health development. Sustainable growth rate, the concept of Robert C. Higgins of the forms of maximum rate of growth in sales that can be achieved given by the firm's profitability, asset utilization, or deserved dividend payout, and debt financial leverage ratios. The sustainable growth rate is measured how much the firm can grow without borrowing more money. After the firm is passing its rate, is borrowed fund other from other sources and facilitate growth. Variable typical includes net profit, margins, and new and existing revenues. Asset turnover ratio, which is our ratio of the sales revenue total assets. Assets to beginning of the period equity ratio. To beginning of equity beginning period of equity ratio and retention rate. This definition of fraction of the earning retention ratio. Standard growth rate is equal to rate of equity equal to 1 minus dividend payout ratio. Sustainability growth models assume that business wants to maintain target capital structure without issuing new capital, maintain target dividend payout ratio, increase the sales rapidly as a market condition allows. Since the asset is to beginning of the period, equity ratio is constant and the firm's only source of new equity is retained earning. Sales and assets cannot grow any faster than the retained earning plus additional debt that is retained and the earning can support. Sustainable growth rate is consistent with the observed evidence. The most corporate and reluctant to issue new equity. If, however, the firm is willing to issue additional equity, there is in principle no financial constraint to the growth rate. I write a short note on the following interference of financial policy and strategic management. A starting point of the organization is the money, and the ending point of the organization is also money. In fact, it must be appreciated so that the interference of strategy management and financial policy can be clearly understood. No organization can run an existing business and promote a new expansion project without sustainable internal mobilization of financial base, both internal and external mobilization of financial resources. The resource of finance and capital structure are the most important dimension of strategic plan. Generation of funds is arising out of ownership capital and borrowed capital. Although the mobilization fund and the policy maker should decide on the capital structure to indicate the desired mix of equity capital and debt capital. There are some norms of debt equity ratio. These are aimed to maximize the risk of excessive loan, minimize the risk of excessive loan. For private public sector, organization norm is 1:1 ratio, while the private sector has 2:1 ratio. However, the ratio is a deal with the varies in the industry to study for a capital intensive industries. The proportion of debt to equity is much higher. Similar in the case of high cost project is priority sector or the projects are under development region. No organization can existing business to promote a new expansion project without sustainable internal mobilized finance base, both internal and external mobilized finance base. A source of finance and capital structures are the most common dimension of strategic plan. The generation of funds may arise out of ownership, capital, and borrowed capital. The company may issue equity shares and prefer shares of mobilized ownership capital. A time of mobilizing fund, the policymaker will decide on the capital structure to indicate desired mix of equity capital and debt capital. These are norms of debt equity ratio, whereas the ratio of ideals from varies from industry to industry. It is also depend upon the planning mode of organization under the study. Other important dimension of strategic management and financial policy interference is the investment and fund allocation decision. Planner has to frame policies to regulate the investment in fixed assets and retaining the current assets, and the investment process moved by the different business units can be addition to the new product, increasing the level of operation of existing product and cost of reduction, efficiency, utilization of resources through a new approach and closer monitoring of different criteria, crucial assets. On the basis of aforesaid three types of proposals, the planner should be evaluate each of them by making it into group of comparison and the light of capital budget exercise. Dividend policies and at another area of making financial policy decisions after the strategic performance of the company. A close interference is needed to frame the policy to be beneficial to all. The dividend policy decision deals with the extent of earnings to be distributed as a dividend and extent of earnings to be retained for future expansion scheme of the firm. In this basis, the aforesaid points of financial policy of the company cannot be worked out in isolation of other financial policies. It is a wide appeal and a closer link of overall organization performance and direction to grow. These policies brings related to external awareness about the firm, especially the awareness of the investor about the firm with respect of the internal performance. It is always a process of evaluation action in the minds of current and future stakeholders of the company. As a result of the preference of parentage of the company depend on significantly financial policy framework. It should attract the attention of the corporate plan while framing the financial policy, not the later stage, but during the stage of corporate planning itself. What makes an organization sustainable on specific steps? Sustainable growth is a rate of firms to maximize the rate of growth of sales that can be achieved. Even the firm's profit asset utilization desired dividend payout and debt ratio. To make an organization sustainable, in order to sustainable organization must have a clear strategic direction. It is able to scan the environment and content to identify the opportunity for the organization. Be able to attract, manage, and retain competent staff, have an adequate administration of financial infrastructure, be able to demonstrate its effectiveness and impact of the order of leverage for other resources, get corporate support from the involvement in the work. Objective sustainable growth model following objective need to be defined. Maintain a target capital structure without new equity. Maintain target dividend plan, dividend payment ratio. Increase the sale rapidly in market conditions. Variable. A variable is in sustainable growth or net profit margin, new additional revenue, asset turnover ratio, asset to beginning of the period equity ratio, and retention ratio. Variation, the incremental growth strategy, profit strategy, and pause strategy, and other variation of sustainable growth and strategy need to be defined and implemented. Analysis, for if the firm has a growth, actual growth rate that are less than the SGR, estimated growth ratio model. The management principal objective is to find out the productive uses of the cash flow that exist to access their needs to enhance the actual growth rate through the acquisition of rapid growing companies. What makes organization financially sustainable? To be a financially sustainable organization must have more than one source of income, more than one way of generating income, do strategic action, financial planning regularly, have adequate financial system, have a good public image, to be clear about the values, and have a financial autonomy. Various process of strategic decision making. Meidberg, Reisenheny theory provides model of process of strategic decision making identification following three major phases in the subroute and subphases are identification phase, decision recognition route. To identify the opportunity, problem, and crisis to commercial additional activity. Diagnosing route to collect the information relating to the opportunity, problem, crisis to identify the problem clearly. Development phases, search routine, generate alternative solution to problem, addition routine, addition to new solution to problem on hand, and adopt the modified previously identified ready-made solution. Selection phase, This is required to be in search and routine identification more alternative than can be intensively evaluated, alternates and quickly scanned and the intraceable once eliminated. That is identification, development, selection. Briefly discuss the brief key decisions fall within the scope of financial strategy. The key decisions falling in the scope of financial strategy include financial decision, investment decision, dividend decision, portfolio decision. Financial decision. The decision deals with the mode of financing, mix equity capital and debt capital. Investment decision. This decision involves profitable utilization of firms fund, especially long-term projects, capital projects. Since the future benefits associated with the projects are not known as certainty, investment decisions necessarily involves risk. The projects are therefore evaluated in relation to the expected return and risk. Dividend decisions. The decision determined with the division of owning between payment to shareholder and reinvestment in the company. Portfolio division. The decisions involve evaluation of investment based on the contribution to aggregate performance of the entire corporate rather than isolated character of the investment themselves. As a financial strategist, you will depend on certain key financial decisions discussed. The key decisions falling within the scope of financial strategies are following: financial decisions, investment decisions, and dividend decisions, and portfolio decisions. Financial decisions. These decisions deal with the mode of financing or a mix of equity capital and debt capital. Investment decisions. These are decisions involve profitable utilization of the firm's fund, especially long-term projects, since the future benefit associated with such projects are not known with the certainty, the investment decision necessarily involves risk. This project are therefore evaluated in relation to the expected return and risk. Dividend decision. These dividend determine the division of earning between payment to shareholder and reinvestment of the company. Portfolio decision. The decisions involves evaluation of the investment based on the contribution to the appropriate performance and the entire corporation rather than isolation isolate characteristic of investment themselves. State the strategy of different hierarchy level. And there are three level of strategy: corporate level strategy, function business level strategy, and functional level strategy. Corporate level strategy fundamental is a concept that is selection of business in which company would complete with the development of coordination and portfolio business. Corporate level strategy would be able to answer three basic: sustainability, feasibility, acceptability. When the strategy would work for the accomplishment of common objective of goal sustainability. Feasibility: determine the kind and number of resources required to formulate the implement strategies feasibility and acceptability and concern with the stakeholder satisfaction and the financial and non-financial and can be financial non-financial. Business unit strategy: the business unit strategic business unit can be any profit center that can be planned independently from the other business unit of corporation. The business unit level strategic issues about the practical coordination of operation unit and developing, sustaining and competitive advantages of the product and service that are produced. Functional level strategy: the functional level is a level of operation division and departments. This strategy issued at the level and related to the functional business operation and value chain. Functional level strategies and R&D, operations, manufacture, marketing, finance, human resources involves development and coordination of resources through business unit having level strategy can be exhausted effectively and efficiently. The functioning unit of organization are involved in the higher level strategies. They provide input of the business and unit level and corporate level strategy and providing information on the consumer feedback on the resources capability on which higher level strategy is developed. The functioning unit are translated into discrete action plans that is each developed department divisions must be accomplished with strategy to succeed. Explain the outcomes of financial planning. Outcomes of financial planning are financial objective, financial decision making, financial measures. Financial objectives. The financial objective are decided on the very outset on the rest of decisions can be taken accordingly. Objective need to be consistent with the corporate mission and corporate objective. Financial decision making. The financial decision making helps analyzing the financial problems they have been faced by the corporate and according to decision of deciding the course of action to be taken. Financial measures. Financial measures like ratio analysis of cash flow statements are used to evaluate the performance of the company. Selections are measured high again corporate objective. What sustainable growth rate and what makes organization sustainable? Sustainable growth is a measure how much the firm can grow without borrowing any money. After a firm has passed the rate, it must borrow money and another source of facility for us. What makes organization sustainable? In order to be sustainable, organization must have clear strategic direction, able to scan the environment and identify the opportunity of its work, be able to attract, manage, and retain competent staffs, have an adequate administrative financial infrastructure, have an demonstrate its effectiveness and impact on order of leverage and further resources to get community support for the involvement of its work. What makes the organization financially sustainable? To be finally sustainable, organization must have more than one source of income, has more than one way of generating income through strategic action, financial planning regularly, have adequate financial system, do and good public image, be clear with the values, and have financial autonomy.